Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Partner. This is the podcast, the very first podcast for the National Association for Professional Development Schools. And we are so excited because this year is a very special year. At the 2021 annual conference of the National Association for Professional Development Schools, we launched the revised edition of the 9 Essentials. And this year has been termed the Year of the 9 Essentials. So each month we are going to be bringing to you some webinars, some virtual chats, and then we're going to couple them with a podcast. So like I said, this is our first podcast, and what we want to do is highlight some of the amazing work happening across the globe by school and university partners who are really engaging in and working to enact these 9 essentials to make high quality school-university collaboration happen. So the frame for our podcast is actually a book that Dr. Eva Guerin and I co-edited and was published last year. So I am Rebecca West Burns. I am the president of the National Association for Professional Development Schools, and I'm also the Bill Harold Endowed Professor and Director of Clinical Practice and Educational Partnerships at the University of North Florida. I say Florida because I'm currently outside enjoying the beautiful weather, and you probably are hearing the birds in the background. So they're going to add a nice little background to our podcast today. So Eva and I published this edited book, and each month we are going to feature a couple authors from our book who are going to share with us about their PDS. They're going to talk about their case, and they're going to talk about how it connects to the particular essential we are highlighting. At the end of our podcast today, we will share with you how you can access that book if you are interested, and we'll also share with you ways that you can get involved in NAPDS. So without further ado, Eva, will you tell us who our authors are for today?
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited that this is our first podcast and that you've decided to join us. We're very fortunate to have two of our case authors with us today. First, we have Dr. Kristien Zenkov, a professor of education at George Mason University, the author of more than 150 articles and book chapters and 7 books that he's also authored. One of them was on social justice in professional development schools. He's a longtime boundary-spanning educator and a champion for social justice and equity in teacher education. Along with Kristien, we also have Michelle Lague, who is also from George Mason University, where she is a doctoral candidate in literacy and teacher education and a former high school English teacher. They're going to be sharing their case that was in our book as an add-on chapter. At the very end of the original 9 Essentials, we decided to add a chapter to our book about equity and social justice in professional development schools. Now, as you know, the new 9 Essentials have really done an excellent job of integrating social justice into the 9 Essentials. In our first iteration of the 9 Essentials, the notion of social justice was more implied, and now we are using it as a strategic focus for the new 9 Essentials of what it means to be a professional development school.
I just wanted to share with you, if you're on a podcast, you won't be able to see my screen, but on the YouTube channel, you might be able to hopefully see my screen. And so as Eva mentioned, the book really focused on the original essentials because it came out before the revised essentials. But just to give you all a little taste of what the original essential looked like and now what the revised essential is, and then why we have Kristien and Michelle here today to talk. So the original essential 1, was a comprehensive mission that is broader in its outreach and scope than the mission of any partner, and that furthers the education profession and its responsibility to advance equity within our schools, and by potential extension, the broader community. The revised Essential 1 that was just published now says, a PDS is a learning community guided by a comprehensive articulated mission that is broader than the goals of any single partner and that aims to advance equity, anti-racism, and social justice within and among schools, colleges, universities, and their respective community and professional partners. And so I think equity, for those of us who were involved in the NAPDS for a long time, equity has been a part of our essentials, but really I think the revised essentials really are bold in the fact that we're taking a stance and we're really making a commitment to advancing equity, social justice, and anti-racism. And so that's why we wanted to start today with Kristien and Michelle, who are going to talk a little bit about how they are advancing equity, social justice, and anti-racism within their context. So, Kristien and Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about your PDS first?
Yeah, thanks, Becky, and thanks, Eva. Thanks for having us here. I think we're going to try to offer what we hope is sort of a bookend set of perspectives on on our consideration of Essential One and our PDS or school university partnerships. And by bookend, I mean I'll happily respond to each of the questions. Someone who's been involved with this particular program for a long time, 13 years. And then Michelle is going to offer her perspective as well, because she's actually someone who went through our program and is at an earlier stage of working with our partnerships and with PDSs and this principle. For our PDSs, I always have to be honest and just admit the truth, is that in our secondary education program, we've been functioning with a school university partnership framework for 9 years. For me, that follows on 8 years of working with a PDS partnership in Cleveland, at Cleveland State. But at Mason, we're honest in the sense that we do not have a full-on professional development school model in place. We've in my 13 years at Mason, we just haven't gotten there. We are what I think I might now characterize as permanently aspirational. Maybe it's not permanent, but it's definitely aspirational. We're actually glad that the new essentials are out, because it's kind of a point for us to reconsider how close are we to those ideals. Michelle, what would you say?
Yeah, I can speak to, I think, the development of or towards a PDS at George Mason University, a PDS model, that is, just in my experience there. So I went through the program about 4 years ago, started 5 or 6 years ago. And even just since then, the way that George Mason functions in its clinical experiences is much closer to a PDS model. I've really been able to see that development kind of away from this like beginning experimental stage at maybe 1 or 2 schools toward several schools now, where we have teachers who went through our program, who we know kind of hold the same ideals as us, that are hosting our pre-service teachers now at their schools, and that continues to grow even now.
We would love to hear a little bit about your case.
Sure, and it is exciting that again that you all are focusing on not just the essentials, but the new essentials, in particular, starting with Essential One. It's Essential One is the one that's always made the most sense to me and to us, to me and Michelle, and to our program. It's one of the ideals, the social justice ideal is something that's explicit in our program. It's something that we consider throughout the program. And I think it's fair to say we do it most explicitly through the English education track of our program, and that's what I coordinate. Our case actually describes how we do that. And it's something that's evolved, but it's very much, actually, Michelle, I think it's probably, we started doing the Stories of Injustice project right about the same time that we started the partnership network. So they are completely in alignment. In the case, we share a project that we literally start with English teacher education candidates on the very first day of their class and of the program. So that notion of social justice is absolutely integrated, woven throughout. You can't escape it. In fact, it's kind of a lovely thing that our candidates they believe that this is the way that teacher education and teaching should occur. Why is that? Because that's absolutely the way that we start. Again, very first day. The case describes the Story of Injustice project, where our candidates are asked on the very first day to identify an injustice that they care about and that they think their future teachers their future students should care about. And then we ask them to write a story That's the starting point for a semester-long project. A story about that injustice that's written in a form they would ask their future students to read and that they would ask their future students to write. And then that becomes the foundation for, again, a semester-long multi-genre project and a lesson plan. It is the heart of the course. Michelle actually completed this work, completed this project, and is now teaching in our program. So again, has another really rich perspective on this.
Yeah, and I have to say, just kind of reflecting on my time in that first class of the program, I think that this project was and is still one of the most motivating things about the program as a teacher. Just kind of starting a teacher prep program, for me at least, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was just kind of trying out like the teaching thing and then seeing where it went. And this conversation that we had throughout that class and really throughout the program centered around equity and social justice, and not just these like abstract ideas of social justice and equity, but something that was really grounded in our own experiences, because it was a story that we were telling about our personal experience in schools mostly. So that's been really motivating to me, as a pre-service teacher through the program, and then coming back to it now, teaching in the program, just being able to help teachers reflect on their own experience and really fully think about what it is that they want to do as a teacher, and what that maybe higher purpose is for them. That's very concrete, and I think that this project really encapsulates that and helps pre-service teachers not just sort of see what they want to do, but see themselves doing it. And that's really one of the main priorities for us with this project.
And I'm super excited you guys are sharing this project, because I just remember reading about it, and I was really inspired. And I hope that, our readers will get a chance and look up the book and get a chance to read your case more thoroughly, because I thought it was just fascinating. So I'm thinking about the listener right now. And so can you do me a favor and, just tell us, like, what's one thing you want, the listener to take with them about Essential One, or what advice do you have for them about partnering around this comprehensive mission connected to equity, social justice, and anti-racism?
I would say it's such a rich question, and it's one that's very useful to a listener, to anyone in our work, teacher education. So thank you for that. What I think about now is I think back to a dear mentor of mine when I was in graduate school. I taught for a few years, several years at that point, but I still felt really fresh as a teacher. And I was actually supervising a student teacher, so working with someone who was going to become an elementary teacher. And the mentor was a dear friend named Denise Jess in Madison, Wisconsin. And I'll never forget her saying to me and to Tara, her intern at that time, when Tara asked, "What do you say when a child," and we're talking third graders at that point, when a child says something that's troubling, that really challenges justice, that is unjust or unjust in some way. Denise's response, and Michelle's probably heard me say this: "What do you say in a moment like that? You say something. It almost doesn't matter what you say something." And that's what I think about with this ideal, this essential number one, is that it needs to start from minute one. It needs to be an orienting ideal of our programs, of our classes, of all of our work. Now, that doesn't mean that we all have to have figured out what that looks like or how that's going to play out, but it has to be something that we begin with. It's not like one of those things in teacher education that, hey, 5 years, 10 years into the profession, I complete this professional development training and I learn this new thing. Oh, I learn how to use performance assessment in some other way, or I learn how to teach grammar in a new way. Teaching with a social justice orientation isn't that. It's the thing that you begin with, and content and everything else comes after.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like we need to have like a hashtag say something. I feel really compelled. Like, that's a really great nugget to leave with. I'm sorry, Michelle, do you want to add on to anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, we talk about this a lot, that teaching for equity, teaching for social justice, it's really a disposition. It's not something that you can just kind of tack on to your curriculum. It's something that it's like an orientation that you have, and that's something that we really try to discuss a lot in our program. And I think one of the biggest things that you kind of have to reckon with as a new teacher, and this is something that I went through, something I talk a lot to my pre-service teachers about, is like you just can't do it all, and it's really hard to fully grasp that. Thinking about like first year teaching, even second year teaching, probably for a long time, that you really can't do all the things you want to do, and so I think really talking about these issues and helping pre-service teachers and others in our program kind of define and find what that issue is for them, maybe one or two things that they just really care about. And thinking back to the story of injustice, that's kind of what we do, is we ask them, what did you go through in school? What do you care about? What do you really want your students to know and do and reflect on? And that is so helpful for that idea that you just can't do it all and can't be it all, at least not right away. It kind of gives you something to focus on, and feel like you're doing something and saying something, and you are, of course. Maybe that's just smaller than you might have expected when you first enter a teaching program. But that was so helpful to me to just be able to focus on one particular area and really know that I am doing what I can in that area rather than, trying to do it all.
That's great.
I'm so very moved to hear these cases come alive. While I read the case, of course, but to hear the authors talk about their work and the passion they have for working with teacher candidates and with young adults in a high school, and coming together to really talk about what social justice means. There's another case in the book, and I'd like to do a little bit about it, come together to talk about how to re-look at what they were already doing and kind of revise their programs. So the second case takes a little bit of a different look at equity and social justice. And what they did was look at their site-based literacy methods course and kind of decide what they could do to connect the teacher candidates with diverse learners so that they could start thinking about what it means to meet the needs of all students. And what they did was they renamed the teacher candidates and the children in the elementary school by calling them the tall teachers and the small teachers. And they completely revised the communications flow. So how we sometimes arrange desks and chairs in a classroom, they really talked about what they could do to have a more equitable response opportunity for students, and the students identified were a very diverse group of students. So the main theme in these cases is that, yes, we can talk about social justice and equity in our professional school partnerships, that we have boundary spanning roles, that we're working together between teacher candidates, the PDS teachers, and the university faculty. So if you want to read more, the second case is also quite interesting and compelling.
Thanks, Eva. So as we wrap up today, I would just like to first give a huge thank you to Kristien and Michelle. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing about your experiences in your PDS and your case in the book. Please reach out to Kristien and Michelle. I should have you guys share your emails, or you can look them up at George Mason University, so you can reach out to them, and I'm sure they would be glad to share more information, right? Absolutely.
Yes,
all right.
absolutely.
So if you're curious about the National Association for Professional Development Schools, which, by the way, we believe to be one of the leading national, the leading national organization dedicated to exemplary school-university partnerships, and we see professional development schools as those exemplars, please go to www.napds.org to learn more. You can click on the About tab and click on the 9 Essentials if you are curious about finding out what those new revised essentials are and how you might be able to use them to advance your school-university partnership. We'd also like to say, hey, let's get involved with NAPDS. You've got a great story to share. Please come to NAPDS. There are many ways to get involved. You can publish on our blog/newsletter, Stories from the Field. You can submit an article to PDS Partners. That's one of our journals for the National Association for Professional Development Schools. And we also have School-University Partnerships, which is another journal that we have through the organization. If you are curious about reading more about Kristien and Michelle's case or other cases connected to the 9 Essentials, please go to tinyurl/PDS Cases in Action. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Let's Partner.